Hello there, and welcome to our fourth episode in the Brand Bewitchery series, as I take you through each chapter of my guidebook to help you wield the story cycle system to craft spellbinding stories for your brand. I'm Park Howell, host of the Business of Story, and today you will learn about the fourth step in the story cycle called disruption. You will learn how to craft a truly compelling, unique value proposition, or UVP, to make you the most timely, relevant, and urgent offering for your customers to help them get what they want out of life. In the first three episodes of the Brand Bewitchery series, we covered what is essentially Act 1 of the 10-step story cycle system. In Chapter 1, called Backstory, you declared your number one position in the marketplace, what you do differently and more distinctively than your competition. In Chapter 2, Heroes, you prioritized your top three audiences and focused on your number one customer as the central character or hero in your brand story. In Chapter 3, you identified what's at stake for your prospects and customers, what they emotionally wish to achieve, and what they physically want to invest in to fulfill their wish. Remember, your brand is in the wish-granting business. If you missed any of these earlier chapters, you will find links in the show notes to episode number 420, 421, and 423. In today's episode, we will transition into Act 3, starting in Chapter 4, called Disruption. You will identify what is changing in your customer's world and how you are the most timely, relevant, and urgent offering to help them navigate that change. In this show, you will craft your unique value proposition, UVP, to find a clear theme for your brand narrative. What do you say? Let's get after it. Chapter 4, Disruption, How Your UVP Will Win the Day. Quote, "We're here to put a dent in the universe. Otherwise, why else even be here?" Steve Jobs. To launch a brand story, you must be disruptive. We climbed out of our bunk beds hours before Sunday Mass, toasted blueberry Pop-Tarts, and scrambled to the TV in our pajamas. I was 8 years old. My brother Tom was 11. At precisely 6:32 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, time stopped. I sat mesmerized watching the grainy black and white video from space that dispelled our last bits of sleepiness. We stared as the audio beeped and crackled, watching the spaceman descend from his craft. On cue, he said, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." On July 20th, 1969, 50 years ago as of this writing, American astronaut Neil Armstrong left an enduring footprint on the surface of the moon and made an indelible stamp on our world. All because of a story that disrupted the status quo. 8 years earlier, on May 25th, 1961, President John F. Kennedy delivered his historic moonshot speech to Congress, wherein he told the country of his wish to demonstrate America's superiority in space by putting a man on the moon and returning him safely home. Kennedy knew he had to marshal the will of the American people to achieve such an audacious feat. So he didn't simply announce that we were going to the moon and leave it at that. Instead, he authored a science fiction fantasy harnessing the gravitational pull of story on our collective imaginations to enroll the country in a monumental quest.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth. No single space project in this period will be more impressive to mankind or more important for the long-range exploration of space, and none will be so difficult or expensive to accomplish. We propose to accelerate the development of the appropriate lunar spacecraft. We propose to develop alternate liquid and solid fuel boosters, much larger than any now being developed, until certain which is superior. We propose additional funds for other engine development and for unmanned exploration, explorations which are particularly important for one purpose which this nation will never overlook: the survival of the man who first makes this daring flight. But in a very real sense, it will not be one man going to the moon. If we make this judgment affirmatively, it will be an entire nation, for all of us must work to put him there.
To make sure America did not lose its will to land a man on the moon, in the following year, JFK advanced the story in his moon speech at Rice University in Houston on September 12, 1962.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. But if I were to say, my fellow citizens, that we shall send to the moon 240,000 miles away from the control station in Houston, a giant rocket more than 300 feet tall, the length of this football field, made of new metal alloys, some of which have not yet been invented, capable of standing heat and stresses several times more than have ever been experienced, fitted together with a precision better than the finest watch, carrying all the equipment needed for propulsion, guidance, control, communications, food, and survival, on an untried mission to an unknown celestial body, and then return it safely to Earth, re-entering the atmosphere at speeds of over 25,000 miles per hour, causing heat about half that on the temperature of the sun, almost as hot as it is here today, and do all this, and do all this, and do it right, and do it first before this decade is out, then we must be bold. And therefore, as we set sail, we ask God's blessing on the most hazardous and dangerous and greatest adventure on which man has ever embarked. Thank you.
Five decades later, America remains the leader in space exploration because of JFK's disruptive call to adventure. How to disrupt your audience and trigger their will to act. Although you and your purpose-driven brand may not be exploring the outer reaches of our universe to save and advance humankind, you are on this earth to propel those you serve to a bit of peace and prosperity, which is no small feat. But to stir your audience's will to act, you must first get them to buy into your quest. You must first ignite their curiosity about you and your offering. In Chapter 3, Stakes, we explored what your audiences wish emotionally to have for themselves and what they want physically to help make it happen. But where does their will to accomplish their goal come from? We all seek opportunities to make our lives better while mitigating the risk inherent in that effort. But it's hard to shake ourselves out of the safety of the status quo. So we want what we believe are foolproof ways to achieve our wishes that provide us with the will to move forward. We want the singular provider in our pursuit, the brand, to offer exactly what we need and be the best at what the brand provides. This is where your unique value proposition, or UVP, comes in. Your UVP defines what makes you the most timely, relevant, and urgent offering for your customers. It explicitly states what you do and how you're different, separating you from the surly bonds of your marketplace competition. Think of your UVP as your own personal space race. Your goal is to land your brand module, not on the moon, but in the correct space in your customers' minds that will ignite their will to act. Your competitors, with their own UVPs, are racing you towards that same spot. The secret about your brand story and UVP is that they are not about what you make, but what you make happen in your customer's life. Your UVP is the spark that ignites the humanity in your brand story. Here are a few UVPs that I think do a great job of articulating each brand's moonshot. Airbnb, belong anywhere. MailChimp, send better email. Dollar Shave Club, a great shave for a few bucks a month. Apple, think different. FreshBooks, small business accounting software designed for you, the non-accountant. Evernote, remember everything. ClassPass, the most flexible fitness membership ever. Lyft, ride in minutes. Uber, get there, your day belongs to you. Target, expect more, pay less. NASA, explore, discover, understand. NASA could probably use a new UVP. Creating a compelling UVP that everyone can buy into and prosper from is the fourth step of the story cycle system. The UVP is your brand's declaration about how you help your audiences respond to disruption or avoid it in their lives. Remember, a well-crafted UVP makes your offering the most urgent and relevant to help your customers get what they want out of life. Here's an example of how it worked for a community health center that needed to invigorate its brand story. The UVP that grew Adelante Healthcare by 600%. In 2009, Clinica Adelante was a federally qualified health center in Maricopa County, Arizona, having received its first federal grant in 1979. However, the community health center had been founded years earlier as a free farm worker clinic. Clinica Adelante's mission was to, quote, improve the health of our communities by providing quality, comprehensive primary health care regardless of a patient's ability to pay, end quote. But Arizona immigration laws, urban sprawl, increased competition in the healthcare market, and the Great Recession threatened the organization's survival. Therefore, we guided Clinica Adelante through the story cycle system to author a refreshed brand story that celebrated the organization's legacy while creating an aspirational narrative of, quote, sustainable healthcare for all, end quote. The clinic's new purpose-driven brand story was supported by three brand pillars of operating as a financial, cultural, and environmentally sustainable organization. The business results have been off the charts. By 2019, Adelante had quadrupled in size and scope, with 550 plus employees, over $80 million in annual revenue, 75,000 unique patients from newborns to centenarians, and 9 health center locations providing over 252,000 encounters per year. As an expression of its sustainable healthcare for all UVP, Adelante opened the nation's first and currently only LEED Platinum certified community health center in Mesa, Arizona. Plus, Adelante now has 2 LEED Gold certified centers in Peoria and Goodyear, Arizona. By using the story cycle system to guide Adelante Healthcare's new brand story, the organization secured its own sustainability as a business while becoming a national leader in providing sustainable healthcare for all. Let's explore exactly how this was accomplished. Quote, the story cycle was instrumental in defining our new and aspirational story based on our legacy that created an inspiring market position that our organization could live into, providing sustainable healthcare for all, end quote. Avin Tafoya, former CEO, Adelante Healthcare. How the story cycle system defined Adelante's brand story elements. Let me walk you through the Adelante Healthcare story using the 10 steps of the story cycle system. You can use it as a guide to create your own healthy brand story and UVP. Backstory. Clinica Adelante was a 33-year-old community health center founded to treat the healthcare concerns of primarily the migrant farm population in western Maricopa County near Phoenix, Arizona. We rebranded the organization in 2010 as Adelante Healthcare. Heroes. At the center of the Clinica Adelante story are 3 primary audiences. Number 1, the uninsured or underinsured patient. 2, the insured patient. 3, premier providers, including doctors, nurses, and staff. Stakes. Clinica Adelante had 2 important things at stake that were polar opposites: Aveen was first concerned with the survival of the organization. Once she got it healthy again, her goal was to become a national leader in sustainable healthcare, and time was of the essence to carve out that brand position. To become a sustainable healthcare leader, they delivered on what was at stake for their patients: access to comprehensive care regardless of their ability to pay. Operationally, the stakes were high with providers who wanted to practice world-class care in a sustainable, healthy environment. Disruption. Clinica Adelante's disruptive call to adventure was the critical need to refresh its brand to become more relevant to the population it wished to serve and to reverse its declining patient roles. Once they reframed their brand story, the organization became Adelante Healthcare with a UVP of, quote, sustaining healthcare for all Arizonans, end quote. Antagonists. The changing healthcare landscape was due in part to new, more restrictive Arizona immigration law, urban sprawl that replaced farms with houses, increased competition from for-profit healthcare providers, and the Great Recession. Additionally, and even though their hearts were in the right place, the board of directors of Clinica Adelante initially posed an obstacle for progress as they held tight to the legacy of the organization and exhibited a natural reluctance to change. Mentor. Adelante Healthcare has become the go-to provider in Arizona for sustainable healthcare for patients through its practice to the public. They operate 12 clinics, half of them LEED certified, and operate all their current centers through a lens of sustainability while maintaining the availability of quality healthcare for all. Journey. Adelante Healthcare supported its brand position and unique value proposition with 3 brand declarations. Number 1, we will sustain the availability of healthcare for all. Number 2, we will sustain the health of each individual patient. And 3, we will sustain the environmental health of the communities we serve. Victory. Adelante Healthcare has enjoyed approximately 600% growth in the past decade while becoming a thought leader in sustainable healthcare nationwide. Moral. Adelante Healthcare's success shows that we can honor the past while not letting it constrict what's possible for a healthy future. Ritual. In addition to becoming the family physician for a growing number of patients and building and staffing more LEED-certified centers, Adelante is now a national go-to resource for healthcare sustainability across the enterprise. Crafting your UVP with the ABT. When you are creating your UVP, you first consider what's at stake for your brand, as I described above with Adelante Healthcare. Then you look outward to understand what's at stake for your external audiences. Your goal is to create a UVP that bridges these two worlds by being aspirational to your people and actionable to your customers. Once you've determined what's at stake for your brand, define the disruption that is happening in your customer's world. Then describe how you are their answer to this disruption, making your brand the most timely, relevant, and urgent offering to help them get what they want and wish for. I'm about to introduce a great tool to help you craft your UVP, but first, let's take another quick look at JFK's space exploration story. On October 4th, 1957, the Russians disrupted the free world by beating America to space with their satellite called Sputnik, and later by launching the first man into orbit, Yuri Gagarin. But to keep from being bested by the Ruskies during the Cold War, Americans had to muster the will in response to JFK's daring call to adventure to land a man on the moon and return him safely to Earth. This disruption in the space race was exactly what the nation needed to trigger its will to compete and win by investing north of $25 billion for the Apollo program. Did you feel the tension in the paragraph above? Did it draw you in? That tension is created by a small but powerful narrative framework called the and, but, and therefore, the ABT. I learned it from Dr. Randy Olson. the Harvard evolutionary biologist turned USC filmmaker and author who teaches scientists how to use storytelling to secure grants and clarify their lofty thinking for us commoners. Dr. Olson, author of Houston, We Have a Narrative, Why Science Needs Story, states that the ABT framework is the, quote, nucleus of narrative, end quote. I call it the DNA of story because it uses the narrative structure of agreement, contradiction, consequence that our monkey brains love. To bring the ABT down to earth, Olson wrote a new book for business leaders titled Narrative is Everything, the ABT Framework and Narrative Evolution. I think of the ABT even more simply as setup, problem, resolution. MBAs would call it situation, conflict, resolution. Jerry Seinfeld would describe the ABT as setup, twist, punchline. The bottom line is that the ABT is a perfect 3-act structure. Your mind loves it because it specifies what you're solving for. This is important for you because while your brand is in the wish-granting business, it's the problem you solve for your customer that fulfills their emotional wish. The clearer you are on stating the problem, the easier it is for your audiences to buy into your story. You make a statement of agreement and raise the stakes, but then you inflict conflict or contradiction. Therefore, you provide the answer to the question, what next? This propels your story forward while establishing the problem your brand is solving for. Here's a simple way of working through this fundamental narrative structure. Set the stage and raise the stakes, but state the problem. Therefore, reveal your solution. Think of the ABT as your brain's fundamental operating code that instantly processes all of life's events. Where am I? What's changing? How must I react? The and sets the stage for what is. The but upends or disrupts the status quo. It's the contradiction to a paradigm, the complication that you must overcome. The greater the contrast between your setup with the and part of your ABT and the but element, the more relevant your offering becomes, which is resolved with the therefore statement. If you're going to trigger your customer's will to go after what they wish for and want, you must accentuate their need or reason to do so. Otherwise, their wish and want will go unfulfilled and you'll be without a sale. Trevor Hill, CEO of Global Water and a client whose brand story we crafted, said to me, "In sales, all you do is find the hurt, amplify the pain, and heal the wound." Now that is a concise ABT. An ABT I've even been using lately is, most executives communicate and care, but don't connect. Therefore, use the fundamental narrative framework of the ABT to make people care. Here's the ABT for the business of story. You have an important purpose-driven brand story to tell, and you wish it was being heard to create exponential growth for your business, your people, and the communities you serve. But, like your myriad competitors, you're toiling in a crowded, noisy, and distracted world that commoditizes your product or service unless you find a way to stand out. Therefore, use the primal power of storytelling to hack through the noise and hook the hearts of your audience. Align your people, engage your customers, and build trust in your offering that everyone can buy into and prosper from. This ABT helped me clarify the need for the story cycle system to help purpose-driven leaders clarify their stories, to amplify their impact, and simplify their lives. It's time for you to create an ABT that will lead to your UVP. By the way, I think of the ABT as your storytelling dumbbell because becoming a good storyteller takes practice and exercise to build your narrative muscles. Use the ABT in all of your communications. I've had my Arizona State University Executive Master's students tell me that using the ABT has shortened their email writing by as much as 2/3, and their colleagues thank them for being much more concise and understandable. But the ABT takes practice. Therefore, use it every day, in every way, starting right now for your UVP. Now it's your turn. What's your ABT? Here's how to build it. Identify your number one audience. Define what they want relative to your offering and state why that is important to them. But then identify what's standing in their way. What is the problem they have to overcome in order to get what they want? Therefore, how are you uniquely positioned to be their most timely and relevant option to fulfill their wish, to solve their problem? But therefore. Now that you have clarified the need for your offering and identified what market dynamics you're responding to that amp up your customers' will to act, let's bring these first 4 chapters of the story cycle system together to craft your unique value proposition. Here's how it works for the business of story. Backstory. The business of story is the #1 resource for leaders of purpose-driven brands to align your people, engage your customers, and build trust for your offering using the proven power of the story cycle system. Heroes. We're for you if you're a founder of an emerging business, a C-suite executive, or an entrepreneur who, here are the stakes, wishes to experience exponential growth for your organization, your people, and the communities you serve, and who wants a measurable approach to communications to stand out in a crowded market, to be heard, and to move people to action. But we are unlike traditional ad agencies and typical digital marketing firms that provide standard branding services without an intentional focus on a narrative that hacks through the noise, hooks human emotion, and humanizes your offering. The call to adventure. The business of story conjures compelling brand stories through the applied science and bewitchery of storytelling in a 10-step system that is distilled from the timeless narrative structure of the ancients, inspired by the story artists of Hollywood, influenced by masters of persuasion, guided by trend spotters, and informed by how the human mind grapples for meaning. The business of story UVP is this: excel through the stories you tell. Now it's time for you to capture the following elements of your brand story and ultimately craft your UVP. Here's the exercise in the book Brand Bewitchery. Crafting your unique value proposition. First, identify your audience. Who are you for? Stakes. What do they wish for and want? Competitors, but can't get through your competition. Offering. Therefore, how are you different and distinctive from your competition, making you the most timely, relevant, and urgent offering in your customer's life? From the above, craft your unique value proposition. Final thoughts. The first 3 steps of the story cycle system focused on how you are functionally different from your competition and who you are for, relative to your audiences and what's at stake in their journeys. Now you are beginning to humanize your brand by declaring your unique value proposition. Plus, you've earned the added bonus of learning the and, but, therefore, the ABT narrative framework, which will be invaluable in clarifying all of your communication to amplify your impact and simplify your life. Remember Trevor Hill's sales wisdom about finding the hurt, amplifying the pain, and healing the wound? Well, in Chapter 5, Antagonists, you will learn how to amplify the pain and capitalize on market tension for an even more compelling brand story. Let's go meet your villains, peer through the fog, and bridge the crevasses in your story. Additional resources. For a deeper dive into creating your unique value proposition, visit businessofstory.com/disruption for these additional resources. Read Volume 4 of the Business of Story online magazine, Disruption, Creating Your Unique Value Proposition. Listen to Jennifer Russo on the Business of Story podcast to learn how she clarified her personal brand story to land the Director of Communications role for Banner Health. How to bring clarity and energy to your brand story. Watch my quick explanation on how to create your UVP at bit.ly/storycycle-disruption. Story on activity. Find 3 brands you admire and see if you can determine their UVP. Is it clear and compelling? Subtle? Does it need clarifying? Or is it perhaps even non-existent? Thanks so much for listening. And you know what? Please share this episode with anyone you know who would benefit by becoming a more confident and persuasive business storyteller. Theme music is composed by Darius Holbert, community development by Marissa Hill, and the show is edited by Caden Howell. If I can help you and your team excel through the stories you tell, hit our contact page at businessofstory.com for information on all of our in-person, virtual, and hybrid mastery courses, keynotes, and even do-it-yourself storytelling training. Please join us next week when we will amplify the impact of the Brand Bewitchery series by showing you how to become a Reiki master in storytelling so that you can use the healing energy of your stories to nudge the world in any direction you choose. Until then, remember that the most potent story you will ever tell is the story you tell yourself, so make it epic.